Paul, how are you?
I'm great, man. What's going on? I just got a fresh pot.
You got a fresh pot?
I got a fresh pot, yeah.
I had a taller glass, so I was good.
I did I actually even dove in and did the like it was brewing, and there's like out in the kitchen there's like one of those big like diner things, and you got
the
bun thing, and you put the coffee mug under. It's right from the source.
That's
it. Right from the source, Bret.
Right out of the spring.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Well, this is episode 4.
Oh.
And you know what? And not ironically, that's not irony.
It's not irony.
Isn't it ironic? That's not irony.
Yeah, we were so angry at Alanis in the 90s for not being ironic.
It wasn't ironic.
And here we are.
It was ironic.
Here we are now.
It wasn't, yeah, here we are. Anyhow, what was I saying?
Ironically.
Ironically, but not ironically. We're gonna talk about something else because that went off the rails.
Right away?
Right all the way.
Right away.
Oh, okay, we're going back. Anyhow, we were talking about turning points, detours, things like that, things that made a difference.
Yeah.
And then we go off the rails, which is what this is all about.
It's my favorite part.
This is the part. So like the more planning I do, no planning. So
thinking's overrated.
Thinking's overrated. I will tell you. I will jump forward. I'll tell you a story, a turning point story for me. But this was like kind of after we did the whole Saturation Acres Danville thing, and then you went to work at the school, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like what had happened was we had done that probably about 6-7 years, right? Mm-hmm. And then you had left, and we were kind of like the studio was kind of like equidistant almost between the two of us. Well, you were a little closer, but but it was like it was easy for us to converge there. Yeah. And then you had went to work at Susquehanna, and then I moved like another half hour north, and the wife and I started working on opening a bakery, but then you leave, and then we have this empty studio. Not empty, but it's like I have to drive down to there.
Now you got to drive farther.
There's only one for me. I'm down there, and it's lonely.
It is lonely.
It's a lonely situation.
I mean, there was a snake there.
There were 2 snakes. There were 2 snakes. That was a funny story. We'll go off the rails with that. Because we're
this is like Saturation Acres was this cool studio in the woods owned by our friend Rusty Folk from the band called Hybrid Ice, and Rusty's lovely. He rented us this space. It was like basically a cabin in the woods, but it was kind of like it was a little like Abbey Road in terms of there was this high. You walked up the steps to the control room and you looked down.
Yeah.
And one day I was working there by myself. And the steps going down to the main live room it was open underneath, and people threw drum hardware and just stuff in the cases, like whatever, under these stairs. And I was like, I don't know, doing some mixing. I was doing something like amazing up there, I'm sure. And I'm like walking down the stairs, and the head of a black snake comes out toward the bottom of the stairs.
Coming up to the control room. And black snakes are lovely. They have nothing against anybody. They're large.
But they're large, and they have these eyes that
they're aggressive, yeah.
They are a little aggressive. I call you on our little flip phones. I call you, and I'm like, Bret, there's a snake coming out of the steps of the studio, and I don't know what to do. And you're like, all right, honey, just grab a T-shirt. In fact, grab the T-shirt on your back.
Yeah, take it off.
And take it off. I'm like, okay, I'm taking the T-shirt off. Okay, now grab the snake. I'm like, he's moving.
No, just grab the snake behind the head.
Grab the snake behind the head.
Yeah.
I managed to do this, but the 12-year-old girl sounds that were happening over the phone that you must have heard, were like, Bret, I don't know what to do. Bret grew up in the woods in northern tier of Pennsylvania. He's like,
I had this another time there. That was great. Yeah, I remember being on the phone with you, and you did it. You grabbed it. You were like running out. You run out the door and throw the snake.
I think that it's generous of you to say that I did it. I think that.
No, you said.
I did, but it was not dignified.
It was not dignified.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
But anyhow, was the other thing was like I had a woman in doing like she was kind of, she's kind of doing like gospel songs and things like that. And she would come in on Wednesdays, and she was recording and. I mean, nice person. She was great. And we would do these recordings every Wednesday. And then, we had a good time recording her songs and originals. And I mean, I still do that kind of, like those just kind of like a singer-songwriter comes in, build it from the ground up.
Production.
Yeah, do that. But she came in, and then one day she came in to the studio and she's working, and then it's like, okay, we're done with the session. We're like, she's about ready to head out. And I open the door, and on the stoop is like two black snakes mating. So they got their heads wrapped around each other. They got their whole bodies wrapped around. So there's like these two big, huge black heads, like right at the front door of this, like 8-foot snake, 2 8-foot snakes or whatever. And they're enormous. I don't know if it was 8 feet, but it was 6. They were longer than this table.
They could have been 16. It was big.
It was big.
It was
and
big.
The two of them are like, like coming in the door, and I shut the. I shut the door. Now, Ma, you want to?
Talk about the.
We should talk about getting you back in.
Listen to that acoustic guitar.
No, get back in here. Maybe we can talk about getting another date booked.
Oh my Lord!
Then the two snakes kind of slithered off, and they were like probably about 20 feet away, and
by the
I
time
could see them over there, like So then she left and got her car.
Let's get it on.
Yeah.
How do you sing that in Snake? Get it on. Let's get it on.
Like Ricky Tikki Tavi or something. I was like, oh my God.
What's the medical, like the medical symbol doctors with the snakes? It wasn't that at all.
No, these were two big ass black snakes that wanted to hurt me. Yeah. Anyhow, that wasn't what I was going to talk about, was those snakes.
That was a pivot.
That's a pivot. Anyhow, you went to Susquehanna, so I'm there by myself. So it's like, sometimes you have a 3-hour session. So it was like, okay, I got to drive an hour down, do the 3-hour session, drive an hour back, and it was a lot. So that was a lot. So then I was like, and the turning point for me was that situation was I had to meet a guy. Came down, but he was from my area up in Northeast PA, right? Mm-hmm. And this was like 2006, maybe. And the turning point for me for that one was, he comes down, him and his girlfriend, and they do this session. He's like, well, okay, the session thing, I don't have any money, that kind of thing. So I said, well, he said, but I can pay you tomorrow night. I said, well, you're from Northeast PA. I'm from up there. You don't have to drive all the way down here, and me too. Like, let's just meet up there. Let's meet up there, and we'll meet up there, and we'll do the drop, and you can just pay me up there.
Do the drop.
No, I mean it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $130 or something. Yeah. It wasn't a lot of money. So it was
which
like,
he didn't bring.
Which he did not bring.
He couldn't find a bank.
It was a small. No. It's musicians.
It's musicians.
This could be a podcast that just.
Oh yeah, the times I didn't get paid.
Yeah, right on. Anyhow, so like we always used to say, okay, I won't get off topic. I'll stay where we are. Anyhow, but so it's like the next night, I say, well, I'll meet you up by the arena, Northeast PA, right?
A big place. Everybody knows where it is.
Yeah, and it was like up there. There's like a mall there, and we can like meet in the parking lot, and so I meet the guy up there, and he to his credit, he came. He was there, and like I said, how you doing? I said, whatever the bill was. It wasn't piles of money, but I said, well, I'll meet you there. And he reaches in, he goes and gets he goes in and he like comes around the passenger side, opens the door, and pulls out a big ass coffee can of rolled change, right? And he like, what I mean? So he like pulls out like all the money, and I'm standing there.
Not a lot of quarters.
Not a lot of quarters. So I'm standing there with this coffee cup and this rolled change of what I was owed, right? In the parking lot. And at that same time, like the Breaking Benjamin guys who we had just recorded a few years earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like they were about to headline that arena. So they were on the friggin' marquee, right? So we had started with those guys and this is like their big homecoming arena show, and it's like Breaking Benjamin, and they're gonna play this gig, and I'm standing there in the parking lot with these rolled quarters, looking at this freaking sign, you know what I mean? And you're gone, and I'm by myself, and it's like this freaking pathetic situation, and I'm like, oh no, man, no. You know,
it was.
No, man, it's time to make changes. It's time to make changes.
It's time to make changes.
Maybe I'll get a paper route. I don't know. You know, maybe I'll do that. But I'm not staying in this. No, you know, like and you know. So I'm like, so I got like these piles of quarters. You know, I cashed them. Yes, I took. I spent them.
I love coins. Yeah,
I love coins. Yeah,
yeah.
You know, I went through them all, made sure there weren't any wheat pennies or anything like that.
You're like 25, 50, 75, $1, 25.
No, but anyway, that was a turning point for me, because then that was like, okay, I'm getting the hell out of Danville.
I'm getting right.
You know what I mean?
We're done with this.
We're done with that. You know, so it kind of. So then I ended up moving the studio up into Northeast PA, and my thinking was just sort of, okay, we'll just go up there and we'll kind of maybe play out what's done, what's left, and then just kind of call it a day.
Yeah, and then it exploded.
And then it exploded.
Yeah.
I was like, I got freaking people coming. You know what I mean?
The upside was there was a lot of work. The downside was there was a lot of work.
Right. Yeah. So
Great.
I mean, like there's one, like, you know, just once again that sort of necessity situation of you have to
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I think it's, you know, like sometimes, like, you know, you're inspired to change. Sometimes you're like given the opportunity to change. Sometimes you're friggin' forced to.
Sometimes you're just forced to change.
You're forced to you got to do something.
There's
you know, and that wasn't a force to. That was kind of like, okay, enough already.
Yeah,
I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
So, but you know, that was jumping forward, but that was a situation.
I think you're hitting these like really. I mean, there's lots of other like big kind of like turning points,
right?
But these are like kind of the crux of like what leads you to the next thing.
Sure,
you know, it's really cool.
Well, you know, like moving backwards. If you move backwards, like in chronologically, to like, you know, in our case, it's like, you know, it took us 6 years to get from you joining it wasn't quite 6, 5.
Yeah,
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years of doing the whole, you know, gig record thing, send out mailing lists, do merchant, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we did that for like 5 years. Then we got a record deal, and then we toured, you know, basically the U.S. however many times, in Canada and parts of the world. And
but that all comes because, you know, there's no choice at that point.
Right. But my favorite, that's a good one, is like if anybody asks me, like, what's my favorite line in a rock or popular song, you know, of all time, it's really kind of a scat line almost. You know, it'd be the end of like Van Morrison, Into the Mystic. It's like, it's too late to stop now. You know, I mean, I love that. You know, I just love that line. It's like, it's too late to stop now. So, you know, and it's just like a great line for a musician. You know what I mean? Because, like, you know, it's kind of like, I think that, you know, once again, you know, you're in or you're out, and that's the
you are,
life.
and you find yourself in that position, like, kind of like not over and over in the same thing, but it kind of keeps happening where you keep aspiring to this thing, and it's not exactly the situation you envisioned, but you're like, we're following this through. Yeah. And it gets weird because it's, again, like, not stuff you completely plan out. You try as much as you can.
It gets insanely weird.
Yeah.
It gets insanely weird. You know, like I'm always amazed, like, because like my kids are of the age where they're getting into the workforce, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, I mean, they have good jobs, and there's a system in place for them, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can work a job and, okay, I don't like this job, I don't like where I am, and I can go interview for another job. Okay, well, I like it here. Then there's sort of like a system. Okay, if we do well, you know, I can work my way up through this rank. You know what I mean? Like in music or the arts, you can be incredible.
You can be incredible.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yep. No one cares. Like, nobody by cares. Default, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you can be, there's like so many talented people that we've worked with that are way more talented, and you know, a lot of them have really good music and good and they're great work ethic, and it just doesn't matter. I mean, it's just something. There's like a level of luck.
It's a level of luck, that X factor thing of where you're
X factor.
That's the X factor. You're just always prepared, and you have material, and you're compelling, and there are these things that kind of magically line up. It just takes being there persistently.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same story, like over and over and over. You're willing to do things that are uncomfortable, and if you're just there, so, you know.
But I remember, like, back in the day, like us, you know, like getting a record deal, going through that whole thing, like everybody comes home, everybody has kids, and we think, okay, we got a career now. You know what I mean? And like the whole friggin' thing collapses.
Yeah, it just like has a little cycle and then it's over.
Yeah, and it was like, well, you know, it's like they got, you know, if you have a contract, they have to pay you.
Yeah, they got to pay you, right?
No, they don't have to do anything.
Turns out they don't have to pay you. Sorry, keep looking at the camera. That's my
Is that camera 2? Which camera am I on?
I'm supposed to look at him. Huh?
Yeah, well.
Okay, all right. But I mean, it was like a thing where, you know, I mean, like in our case, it was like, you know, we make a record, we finish a record, nothing happens. We go back, we record more songs, and that was another one for me anyway. Like probably, I don't know if you might even say, you know, that would be kind of like your maybe even your favorite record that we ever made.
The Up There Down Here record?
No.
Oh, Amazing Grace?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Really? Yeah. I would think you would say that.
Yeah. Because that was right at the crux of us trying something completely on our own, saying, well, we have nobody else, and like even doubling down, and you're like, I'm going to buy an expensive microphone and Calrec preamps and distressors, and like, you know, we go down to the basement and we start woodshedding things that don't exist, and the only thing is just to try work and try to get good at it, and out of that thing comes something like the most beautiful thing, just because there's nothing preconceived. It happened naturally. It was in a groove. There was just personally, it just kind of felt good just to be on our own and not have anybody, you know, saying you got to come to LA, which is great. You got to come and do this and do this and do this. And so, yeah, that was the biggest one for us, actually.
Yeah.
The biggest long-term pivot. Does that sound correct? Where we learned how to.
I mean, I think that was kind of like because like the whole thing is like we're under contract. We can't really legally record.
Yeah.
Well, we can record. We can't release it. Yeah. So you know, so we're making all this music that's kind of left and right of everything that we've ever done, and you know, it's just like. You know, I think, you know, what it all comes down to, you know, whether it be music or in the arts is kind of like, you know, I remember a guy once said to us, you know, hey, if you sell records, you get to keep making them. Mm-hmm. You know, now music's free, so that doesn't work anymore. Okay, but at the same time, you know, it's like if you put asses in the seats, you're going to keep getting asked to play.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
If you do a good job you're making a record and it sounds great, everybody has a great experience, blah, 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 they're probably going to come back and make another one. Mm-hmm. And I think that just seems so unromantic in a way. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think you think that you read about these stories and you read about what people do to make, you know, to get where they, you know, I mean, the behind music format, you know, the show Behind the Music, the format's always the same. Mm-hmm. Okay, a bunch of kids start here in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. They get going, they get a break, they explode, they lose all their shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Then they get back together.
Right.
And then they come at it with like the right perspective.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's always the same thing. And I think we're kind of like, as maybe a culture, I don't know, people are programmed to look at things. You ever see that? Like you're talking to somebody and it's like you'll say some little buzzword, or you'll say something that, you know, I mean, it used to be, you know what I mean? Like you'll say some little buzzword and they'll immediately, that's when they connect with you. You know, like whatever, because it's a story that they've been told.
Right.
Like, you know, or you say, you know, I mean, I'm not doing politics, but you know, maybe you say mainstream media. Okay.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Those are just words.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just words.
Right.
You know, but they have all sorts of connotations.
Right.
Or whatever. You know, like so it's like you say that, and then everybody's all of a sudden they wake up. You know what I mean? And like music's the same way. You know, like they have this sort of narrative in their head as to what happens, and really it's not what happens. It's really like anything else. It's like construction. It's like carpentry. You know, it's like a day-to-day build, and chances are you might not be any good at it at all. You know, you might get a certain level down the line and decide that it's not worth it. You know what I mean? And
I just saw this this like little Bowie clip on Insta, as did a billion other people. But he was just talking about you're trying to like construct where your kind of brain is coming from, I guess, is the best case scenario. And he's like, it's like, being in the pool. You kind of want to be like just in the deep end, and you're just kind of losing your bearings. You said at that point you have the possibility of something being exciting. And so if you combine what you just said, where you're the day-to-day of a craftsman, because it is, and a craftsman, into the artistic area where you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. You leave room for not just chaos and not just beauty, but all of it and all those things. And it gets more and more difficult when you're in that tight lane where there are expectations from things that don't, necessarily involve songwriting. And it's business. Yes, it's business. But any artist would say that. Any comedian, anybody, you want to leave room for something like cool. And maybe not beautiful, but cool. It's rock and roll. And that's hard. That's really hard. And we kind of had that where we were under that, not under the thumb of the man. It was part of this process. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know how to navigate it. There were lots of people involved. There was money involved and all this kind of stuff. We finally were kind of just back at the very beginning, right before I joined, where you're just on your own and doing it. And that's a really nice little lift. It was a nice lift for us because we didn't have to, we
didn't have to fold the tent up.
Right. Yeah.
Which we would have been close that we would have.
And right. I remember that what Radiohead record came out in
the Bends.
Bends came out in like 97, 98 or something like that. I remember you had the Bends in the kitchen, or like, and then like Beck Sea Change and that kind of stuff. We're like, what? This stuff was like kind of the accumulation of that sensibility of being just out of your depth. And so that's what we got to do. And it still stands as a golden moment,
right,
in our memory and probably in hearts and stuff. So
that was I'm trying to think of what I want to say about that. I mean, it is like Miles. There was like a Miles Davis quote. He just said, like if I play a gig and there's one new thing, that's a good gig. One new thing happens. Mm-hmm. That's a good gig. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, nothing new happens.
Right on.
9 times out of 10,
Right on.
And I find it, I find it interesting. Just, I don't know. Like music is so, people. It's subjective. People. I mean, even something that's like completely middle of the road, or something that serious musical people don't. I think basically the more farther down the line that somebody that does this, and like somebody like I don't know, take anybody, I don't know, Dave Grohl.
Okay.
Dave Grohl likes everything. I bet
he loves everything.
He can find something good about just about most things.
Yep.
Musically.
Yep.
Like I think when you're on a lower level, you're much more opinionated.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like about it, because then and the only thing I like, for me, I don't like is if it feels like deliberately. I don't know if it feels contrived or something, or it feels like it's being put out there for a preconceived reaction.
Yeah, right. Yeah, preconceived reaction.
You know,
Correct.
somebody's doing it, they're trying to get a reaction. If that's where your music's coming from, and you want to make a record that's you know, I don't know, mainstream or a pop record or whatever, it's like I'm totally down with all that.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many I like, and I like things that are real lo-fi as well. You know, I mean, like I don't find any of those things hard to like.
No, and it's not genre specific at all. It's
No. So what else? Okay, well, we're going backwards. We're going backwards. I'm going in reverse chronological order.
That's okay.
You know, so you know, like we were saying that. I mean, another sort of turn for me was going back to even farther pre-River Songs was when we made our second record, which would have been the second record you were involved in, which would have been Unfortunate Result, Spare Time in the Badleys world, would have been that second record. So, like, to me, that one was the first time that we worked with somebody on the outside. You know what I mean? And we kind of came from a little bit of a unique situation because, like, most bands kind of build their things in the clubs and they're a band, and then they get an outside producer to kind of capture what's going on a club level. And, you know, and that can ruin a band too, because if the guy that's in your proximity or the guy that you hire isn't sympathetic to how you should be recorded, that can kind of ruin a group in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all a matter of like where you're, like we did that after we did the first record, we were like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
We're off to the races. And then you get a reaction, but it's not the reaction you thought it was going to be. Right. And we're like, we don't know what we're doing. And so you try something different, and it's only just trying something different. And I think, like, to our credit and everybody's credit, everybody leaned into it as hard as we could. Yeah. And then that kind of informed the third thing where we're like, you know what? I think we get this. I think we're at least we know what the sound we are trying to get is.
Right. I think, but I mean, like, you know, talking about that second record was, I mean, I want to bring him on. Like, we did that one with Jack, Jack Pyers, you know, and like, I mean, Jack was in a band that was very different than us, you know, definitely leaning more like with like Dirty Looks and like leaning more in the AC/DC world. And I want to have Jack on here, you know, for a night. Yeah. And so, and you know, and we work with Jack to this day. And the thing that Jack at that time was really good at was like, okay, was kind of like getting into the weeds of like what's going on with an arrangement, right? You know, as far as like, okay, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, and people start listening to what everybody's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we never had anybody from the outside that was like, hey, are you paying attention to this guy? Like, what's happening? And it doesn't really have to do with anything with specific parts or taste. Yeah. It's like, what are you trying? How are you building an arrangement was the question.
Right, yeah. So it was like I saw, this is random. You see the show Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
You know, so like they have this one drill where they have these long strings attached to their dicks, their penises. You know what I mean? So they have to have like total awareness of where everybody else is. At all times, where there's going to be pain involved, you know. It's like, you know, so it's kind of like that, you know. It's like you got to have like a certain level of awareness of like, okay, here's what everybody's doing, and you know, maybe stylistically we butted heads with a lot of Jack's way, but like that was the first person to ever like really kind of
question
or to get down in the weeds of like, okay, what are you doing, what's going on, and start to really kind of sweat the details on that. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And you know, like, I think we kind of took that whole thing forward. And like, I'll say, you know, like now being many, many, many years into the production game, like for me, like the biggest thrill is when I'm working with a band and I'm like doing pre-pro and you're like, okay, well, you know, sort of the same thing. Well, what are we doing here? What's this? Why is this re-intro so long? Why are you playing that? Why are you over here? You know what I mean? You know, you know, like, I mean, and then the cool thing is like when the band starts to get it, you know, especially if it's young guys, or girls, like, and they start to get it, and then all of a sudden they start fighting among themselves. You know what I mean? Like when they start getting into arguments among themselves, and I'm not even involved. And I'm like, okay,
now we have a conversation.
Now we have a conversation.
We're listening to it. Yeah,
they're paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, so that's really rewarding for me. Like on the production side of doing things, but so that was a big. No, that was a big turn in our existence, like kind of going in reverse, because I was talking about from moving the studio, I was like, from like moving locations of what I was doing back to, what my first story, and then like The Amazing Grace was coming out of post record deal, world, which just kind of started the studio journey, which continues till today. Dating back to kind of this, we kind of went in reverse chronological order because like then that takes back to like when we actually started to say, okay, and like okay, well we're going to figure out what everybody's doing, and then then the next record after that was kind of River Songs, which was a record which wouldn't be my favorite.
Right on.
Album of ours, but it was kind of the one where it all came together.
It had the energy of everybody moving in the same direction at least, and it had a focus, and it had it was very similar. It sounded similar to what we did energy-wise live, which then kind of people added up. But I mean, I didn't quite think of the second record. I think when you're in a band and you have a failure, it's easy to, in your mind, a failure like, oh, we didn't, for instance, second record, well, we didn't get a record deal again, or we didn't get as much radio play again. That you take that as a failure, but what it's just, given you is this definition and a new way to shoot for it. And brand new tools. Jack gave us like brand new tools. I mean, his tools back when he was miking an amplifier in the boiler room of his studio, there were different tools going on back there, but that's for a different story. But like that kind of like, new thing. We never had anybody, producers got to be a little bit of a daddy. It doesn't matter who, daddy or mommy, you gotta like, hey guys, what's going on here? And we never had that example before. And then we took it. We're like, oh, okay, thank you. We get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
valuable.
And that's valuable. And then like you take somebody like, like the classic example is like a Rick Rubin, like.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's like, he doesn't really have any technical abilities. Self-proclaimed that he does not have any technical abilities.
No, none.
But he has once again, he has taste.
He's a tastemaker.
And like he's able to find, kind of like listen and find, what it is about this thing that will maybe connect. Where is the lane? What of this will connect with an audience? And once again, full circle is like most of what he does is not successful. There's only a handful of things that even he gets right.
Right.
But he has like a really great sense of, kind of like finding that focus. Like, it was like, like he was working with Johnny Cash and he said he just put him in a room, set up a microphone and said, play me every song you know. You know what I mean? So he just sat there for, they were releasing that stuff for years to come. And then he would give him covers and like, and they said that the story I heard was he said he would give him mixed CDs, and he said he wanted him to do that Hurt song, the 9 Inch Nails song. He said it was track one on every mix CD he gave him. He kept giving it to him.
He's relentless.
He's relentless. And Johnny Cash didn't get it.
No, he didn't like it.
Didn't like it.
No.
And he didn't get it until he got it.
Yeah.
And and that was certainly the most iconic song of his later career.
Yes.
Just being able to know like what is this thing? What is it? Where is it? Where's what is this thing that can be owned? This vibe and this thing that you're making. How can it be owned? What can this this situation on where can it connect to an outside audience, and that's the hardest part. And you and I have been doing that our whole lives, and there's no learning it. There's no learning at all.
You're just a constant student of trying to find kind of like, well, quote unquote, like the truth of a lyric, the truth of a tone, the truth of a thing, or the center of it. You're just a student of it the whole time.
Right.
Because like the more you find out, the more you're like, oh boy. And you listen to your heroes, you're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Right on.
I'm not making news of the world,
Yeah, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Even those guys, I don't know if you watched the Queen movie.
Yes.
Even those guys.
Yes.
Like they went awry.
Iterations. It's iterations. It's trying to, yeah.
And they went awry, and so I guess, basically, the moral of the story is, suck a whole lot.
You're sucking a lot.
You suck a whole lot. 90% of the time you're going to suck.
Mostly sucking.
Yeah. 10% of the time maybe you're going to be decent. 1% of 10% of that, meaning 1% total, right? So is
that military time?
1,800 hours.
1,800 hours.
Okay, but like it's just a matter of failing a lot and going for the gusto and going for greatness as best you can and trying to find this thing that's uniquely yours. You know what I mean? I think I think that most of the time it's amazing that it ever gets there at all. With anybody, but that's really that's it. And then you got to make adjustments along the way, and that's just and that's what it's about. Turning points and detours, right?
I love it. I love it, man. It's it's the secret sauce. Actually,
it's the secret sauce. Yeah.
This podcast was produced by Stone State Entertainment.